Though it started off as part of the opera, ballet became its own individual art after people seemed so interested in little bits and pieces of choreographed dancing during the opera. Well, basically, the ballet features some solo dancing and some group dancing. The most famous writer of ballets at the time was Tchaikovsky, and you are all undoubtedly familiar with the Nutcracker, whether you like ballet or not. Every Christmas you get it put back in your ear. And Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty are also pretty popularly still done. If you go into just about any big city with an opera or ballet company, you'll end up finding one of those three almost without fail. Just about any city, any time of the year. During the Romantic period, there was a lot more things you could do with the opera companies going on, the church being a less dominant part of life, and just work being a little more dependent on how hard you were willing to do it, seeing that it was ruled, the world was ruled more by the middle class. So when such things happen, you generally also find there's often a lot of people who don't have the attention span left over to listen to very long musical works or artistic works of any kind. So little miniature forms started to become very, very popular. In the keyboard world, we had character pieces. The primary composer of these and the one who made them just so well known to us today would be Chopin. We also had, for the voice, the solo song, which is basically a singer and piano player, and more commonly called the lead. We'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, the general idea of a miniature form was to get an expressive idea that was relatively short. Tried to show off a bit of technique and make it nice and pretty for the general public, just long enough to capture their attention, think, wow, that's cool, then give them something else. If they didn't want to listen to you, fine, they walk away. But if they're like today's world, you generally don't hear a radio song going much more than 3 minutes. Most of it is about as much as you want to hear. Okay, let's do something different. Well, the miniature keyboard forms are kind of like that. You rarely find one much longer than 3 minutes. I'd say that's actually on the long side. They all display a different type of emotion, different levels of technique, and Chopin used the names, the impromptu, the nocturne, mazurka, polonaise, prelude, waltz, and etude. But if you listen to a lot of Chopin's music, even though all of these have little things that are unique to them, it's really hard to explain to someone exactly what the difference between all of these are. You can pretty much say a waltz is in 3, but Chopin's music really seemed like he named it stuff often just because that was what he was thinking of calling it. It's a little harder to tell a definitive reason as to why something is more a nocturne than an impromptu at times. The solo songs, solo voice with piano, we'll call them, again, usually called a Lieder if for plural, or Lied for singular, are German in origin and were often written over the words of German poets, especially when you consider the premier guy at writing them was Schubert. Schubert's music is still used in most colleges to try to teach students how to learn to properly sing. The idea is the songs are not really very long. and usually they're harmonically rough, kind of simple. They're often strophic. So the person can worry more about their pitch, their enunciation, how they stand, and worry about being a proper singer. This stuff is musically rather difficult as far as the singing part of it, so it still has stood the test of time as great art music. But at the time, you might have been able to sing these in a coffee shop. It's still, well, I don't know, we had a coffee shop, maybe the local pub. You still had great singing going on, skilled piano playing, but you could do this anywhere. It was just a singer and a pianist. Period. Done. Now again, as I say, the music is often strophic. They're just taking a basic poem. And if you think how poems work, usually each stanza of a poem will unravel with roughly the same amount of syllables. So you could base the harmonic background that you were using on one stanza on all the stanzas. And that allowed it to be a strophic form.